Welcome to What's the Point? A weekly discussion of truth, realities, challenges, theological and philosophical views, national policies, and international concerns. Welcome to What's the Point? Today we're going to be continuing on with talking about Paul and his ministry. And so today we're going to be focusing more on missions and missionary work. So the first question I have is, how did Paul get into missionary work? Like, why didn't he just stay in one place to teach or preach? Why did he decide to kind of travel?
Honestly, I don't know. uh, maybe that was really God's plan for him, and that was more of his personality. I would like to believe that what you do eventually in your ministry is a reflection of your personality. Paul, even when he was persecuting Christians, was going to place. Okay. And he was doing it passionately. He was doing it intentionally, and he was doing it excellently. That role of trying to persecute Christians. And I think that was in his system to go place to place, which God used for his kingdom. So Paul was still now doing the missionary work with the same passion, intent, and excellence. I think it was more because it was his personality to go place to place. Now, there are people who would love to stay in one place. I know of pastors who just would like to be there and would want to plant churches for years. But there are people who are called to be like missionary, who love their joy is to plant churches and then turn it over to somebody who will pastor it. So
and
I think
two,
it's more
maybe,
of a gift. Yeah.
And two, maybe because he's a tent maker too, so who knows? He may be doing it to kind of do both so that his job is succeeding, and then
could be, yeah. That's very logical. Yes, yes. Because that happens to me a lot. Example, since I go to Qatar, I might as well supervise the church there. And work with your Tito Alex. To go to Dubai, I work with the church there. So I think what Josh was saying is very valid. That it might also be not only his personality, but also his route in business.
Kind of a win-win,
like his
though.
profession.
Yeah, profession, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I didn't really I genuinely was wondering that, because like, why didn't he just choose one place when that's probably easier. But I think, like you guys said, like in his profession, it makes sense to travel like that. And that's kind of a good point too, Dad, where you said that he was already persecuting Christians by, like, he was traveling around doing that. So now God kind of used him to travel, but now to spread the gospel instead of
with a different agenda.
Yeah. So then what does Paul say about missionary work? Like, what was in his teachings, in his letters, and in his writings in the New Testament that talks about missionary work?
I would even want to believe that Paul was the first guy who really seriously took the concept of a church. Church being an assembly of believers, more than a building, as an essential institution to continue Christianity. Because he went place to place, he trained leaders, and then asked them to regularly meet. Although that's the concept of the Old Testament, where there were synagogues, temples. But this time, even without buildings, he encourages them to meet regularly. So I don't know where Paul got that, but he was very much trained in the Jewish culture. So, but he was the Jerusalem church actually happened because it was the center. That was where they were like meeting centrally. So when Jesus left, it was natural for them to congregate there. But it was Paul who went place to place. Philip as well, place to place, and then eventually, if I think after maybe the many years, the other 12 apostles were also going place to place. and sort of follow the model of Paul. So
What do you,
go ahead. I don't know how Josh looks at that.
yeah, like what do you think, like what does Paul, does he push for like missionary work, or is he kind of just like writing these letters because he had planted these churches and so he just wanted to like check in with them?
I think he took what, the Great Commission was to, in essence, teach the gospel to all nations. And so I think that, maybe that's in the back of his mind, the aspect that, hey, it's a big road that we have. And so, why not in my, lifetime get the chance to get as much of it as I can. So, because
Mm,
some have that mindset of, it just depends on the person. Some has that mindset of, oh, I have to go to this, I have to go to this country and then do this, to get the commission going. And then some, just feel that they can just stay in that city that they have and then find the lost in that city. So it depends on the, person. But at the end of the day, when it comes to that, they just want the same thing of, they want to have the gospel to, the lost, to who needs it.
yeah.
So,
And I think Paul, being a tent maker, businessman, I think he had the resources to do that. Whereas Peter and the rest, being fishermen, may not have enough savings to go around.
what?
He can travel, and I think it's also in line with his business. So let us understand that at that time, the idea of the world was only the entire Roman world, wherever the Roman infrastructure reached, roads, that was their idea of the world. I don't
Yeah.
think they understood there was Philippines at the time. I don't think there was America in their thought, but wherever the roads will lead to, Paul will go there. And wherever the ship routes will go, he goes there. So he had the money to pay for fares, for food, to go around. I don't think the other believers did have much of that resources. And
Yeah.
so God used him also in that way, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then it's not really like a requirement, that everybody have to do some kind of missionary work like Paul does, because it just depends on how God has called them.
I mean, in essence, it is, because when you accept God, then missions becomes, this aspect of, we think about missions as, the ends of the earth, this and that. But, what God wants us to do now that we accept him is that the missions, you need to think about it as the sphere of influence that you have. That's the
Mm,
missions. So, all humans have that. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So nobody's exempt from not doing missions, because in
Yeah,
essence,
yeah, correct. We have to understand that some of the words we use today, and this is the reason why some non-Christians like get like criticize us, because some of the words we use today is not really in the Bible, but the substance of it is there. Like Trinity is not, the word Trinity is not. The word missions or Great Commission, what is that? No, but we put a summary for what Jesus said, like go and make disciples of all nations in Matthew 28, the last verses. Go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And for generations, we call that the Great Commission. And
But that is
then
a
we
term that we had created, like it's not
created
necessarily in the Bible in that
as
specific
Great
word.
Commission, word. And then we call it missions. When you go, we associate missions with that ministry of going to places that the gospel is not there yet. That was the original word for missions. And that's the reason why the US and the UK or European Christian countries were very strong at that, because when they were sort of Christianized, they were thinking of the other parts of the world that were not reached by Christianity, which I believe they were taking from the spirit of Paul. So the context, Paul, here he was Christian, supposed to be based in Jerusalem, but he saw the world. So that is the spirit of missions. So the Christian country should look at the areas or barangays or villages or areas in the world that have not been reached by the gospel. And normally that's really what we call missions. Now, the church where we belong, where I belong, particularly the Christian Missionary Alliance, is very, very strong at missions. We have missionaries in Russia. We have a lot of missionaries now who are troubled in Ukraine. We have missionaries in unreached areas, Mongolia, Tibet, the Middle East. So the heart of the alliance is to really send missions. In fact, it was not a denomination. Did you know that, Josh, in the Azusa revival, they were actually a group of Christians who were sending missionaries to different areas in the world. But because of the Azusa revival, the more Pentecostals started, the Foursquare, the Assemblies of God, and that left Albert Simpson alone. And he said, what do I do with this? It was the missionaries and the Christians in the US and the missionaries being sent, they don't know what to do. So let's just call this a Christian and Missionary Alliance movement until it became a denomination. It was not intended
because
to be a
in the
denomination.
US, they don't really know if they say like, oh, because we say that, oh, our dad is a pastor in the Philippines, and then they said, oh, what's a denomination? They don't really know, at least the people that I encounter don't really know like what alliance is.
Yeah,
like,
but when you say Christian Missionary Alliance, CMA, you know it better.
Yeah, or I say like, I guess it's closer to like, if they don't know that, or is it closer to like evangelical? Not, is it evangelical? No,
evangelical,
yeah,
closer to the Assemblies of God, closer to the Baptist, closer to
yeah.
Methodist.
Because here it's like Baptist, Methodist, non-denominational, Pentecostal. That's like all like the regular people know, unless you're kind of like in the more in the like in seminary or whatever. Like I never know how to describe it because I know it's alliance, but then I think it's closer to like evangelical. And if I say evangelical, like, oh, okay, like they kind of understand it.
You know the joke, Kerry. The Baptist gospel is preach the gospel and be Baptist. Not baptized.
Oh,
preach the gospel and be Baptist, not be baptized.
And be Baptist.
Yeah. And the Methodist, you have to do all your work using all the Methodists. Yeah, you know the story. There was a signage in Hong Kong. This is true. You know how Chinese they cannot speak English very well, and so the dentist said, dentist office, I can extract all teeth using different Methodists. Methods.
Oh, funny. Next question I have, so when I was coming up with like the questions, I kind of looked up like what Paul had, or what someone had summarized like Paul's ministry to be and like missionary work in general. So they kind of came up with these 7 like ways or 7 things that missionaries do. And I'll read the 7 things that I found online. It says like missionaries seek instruction, pray continually, find a ministry partner, learn the local culture, work to provide, endure faithfully, and mentor the next generation. So it looks like, I mean, that was kind of, I like that because we've discussed a few of that like in the previous episodes that we've done. But the next question I kind of had is like, how do missionaries stay accountable if they're in a place and they're like the only one there, like they're the first ones there? to teach the gospel, like how do they stay accountable to make sure what they're teaching to the people there is correct?
What was the first one, Terry, on your list?
Seek instruction and then
And
pray
second,
continually.
and third?
Find a ministry partner.
Actually, yeah, in a way, yes. In fact, the study of Paul as the first official missionary, he became sort of a model. But going back to your question of accountability, Paul, after I think the first missionary journey, went back to report to Jerusalem, the church, the mother church. And in fact, for a while, he was being sort of evaluated. So he made sure that he was reporting to an accountable authority, and that's where a lot of the disciples or apostles were congregating. So he wanted to be tested or wanted to be accountable to them, and then he was sent. The missionary work today, in a way, has been structured. Sometimes I deviate or I question the way it's being done today, because today, for you to be sent as a missionary, number one, you have to be sent by a missionary organization. Well, it can be that Paul, after on the second missionary journey, was sent by the Jerusalem church. But the first missionary journey, he did it on his own.
Yeah.
Number two, that before you leave now, and this is where I really sort of debate with some of the leaders in our church. Now, before you leave as a missionary, you have to be sure of your financial support. I don't think that was there. Well, Paul had his own support, maybe. But if you limit it that way, I think you lose the element of faith. And then you need to have a partner, what you mentioned a while ago, who sort of will keep you supported for all your needs. Now, that might be a practical concept. But there are people who believe, like Paul, that when they go there, the people there will somehow provide for you.
Yeah, see, that's the biggest thing. I think, I don't know if that's more Western or if that's the same way in the Philippines, but
Yeah.
the whole financial support before you leave, because it's kind of like assuming that you don't plan to get a job at the new place you're gonna go to, right? Like, I feel like you have to. Now, if they say financial support where you have a job lined up there, and you're gonna, like Paul was a tent maker. We've established this. He has another job besides just preaching. So it's kind of hard to say, oh, you cannot go to, unless you have 100% of your financial support coming from your home church. That kind of assumes that you like have no plans of trying to integrate yourself in the local culture that you're going to go to. Because if the local culture you're going to go to, they're fishermen, maybe if you learn and live that way, they might actually respect you more because you're like living like them. You're like being like them. So then that's how I would see it. I don't know though, if that's accurate.
Well, I'll tell you stories why I have been. Well, number one, there is what we call, and I was part of that initially, in a way, what we call the Filipino missionary diaspora, which
What
is
is that?
really, diaspora is the Filipino, the Filipinos, they are, because of poverty in the Philippines, they're everywhere. So because of poverty in the Philippines, like Carissa and Jos are thrown to America, like that. So because of difficulties, Filipinos are everywhere working as construction workers, maids, professionals. And so the Filipino leaders thought of, like myself, when I went to Saudi Arabia, I planted a church. So I was a missionary there. I was in prison, but I was not supported. I was working. So this concept of a Filipino overseas who can plant a church is being utilized. We have now a movement called the Filipino Diaspora Church Movement. So we utilize Filipinos everywhere who can plant a church, do missionary work without being supported. Use your job. Poland concept. And it is getting big in Saudi Arabia, Middle East, particularly in countries where Christianity is not allowed. So this is Now, this violates the Western way of, yeah, you have to be fully supported before you leave. Because somehow God will provide. You use losing the element of faith. In all the
Yeah.
churches that Paul planted, there was no assurance of support, but somehow they survived. The Corinthian church, Galatians, Thessalonians, Colossians, they survived. Now, I have criticized this because the Christian Missionary Alliance, when they sent a missionary like to Mindanao, we were products of missionary work. In fact, one time in the Assembly of the Alliance World, the president, Rambo, Dr. Rambo, my dad, told me that president was the missionary in Ipil, where I was born, in Mindanao.
Oh, yeah.
President now of the Alliance, world, the whole world. And so
Oh,
during
that's
the
crazy.
assembly in Korea, I went to him. I said, Dr. Rambo, see this picture? I was 1 year old. You were in our house.
Oh,
You were
that's
the
cute.
missionary. You were the missionary in Ipil. He said, "Oh, don't mention that. I feel old." So, and so we were products of missionary work. But here is my critique. In the U.S., example now, for you to be a missionary in the Philippines, they will support you with 3,000 US dollars. Now, you know what that is in the Philippines? You'll be assigned in Mindanao, 3,000 US dollars is 160,000 pesos. In 1 year, you're a millionaire. And so you go there, the concept of the people, wow, there's a white guy over here, let's ask for money. So the attraction is not the gospel, but the money. And so this is, and that's the reason why when I raise points like this, they always accuse me of being a renegade in the denomination because
No, I
I hit
agree.
them with some of the things that, and I even the missionaries they dislike sometimes my comments. I said, you came here because you have $3,000 and you live here like millionaires.
That's I think that I don't know who I was talking to, but it was something like a criticism of people that do like similar to that, like missionary work where they get like $3,000, or you want to go to like do a like a mission trip or a mission where you get supported, like for example the same situation that you said, but a lot of non-Christians label that as you just got the church to pay for your vacation, because if it costs that much, like they're giving you 3,000 a month to live there, it doesn't cost that much to live there, then it's not the gospel that, like you said, that was being sent. Well, I understand in the US $3,000 is a lot. That's like, like barely enough to survive a regular month of regular rent. But
yeah, but I salute my professor. Go ahead, Avi.
What's the balance? Because I know that churches want to be wise and making sure that the people who do want to go on missions, that they're prepared. But what's the balance between like not overfunding, I guess? Like still keep
you have to understand the salary structure or the income, because you see $3,000 in the US is small. That's you can barely survive with that. But in the Philippines, that's equivalent to about 160,000 pesos. That's the salary of a vice president of a company.
Oh.
And so you can do a lot of that. Now, I have to salute my professor in the doctoral ministry program. His name is Mike Fast. He's missionary. He, with the money support that he has, he decided to stay in the squatter area where he is, but use the money to build a lying in, a facility where the poor people can deliver a child. Is that the right word to say, deliver?
To deliver a baby,
babies without the need of a doctor. Here we can deliver babies
like a midwife.
Midwives, yeah. And so he has a center now there for people in the squatter area. So he uses support to build that. Now, that only then did the church follow after that. So that is wise utilization of money, not dole out, but real kingdom building in that sense. But not all. There are people there are missionaries who are well, but I know missionaries who play golf You know how expensive that is in the Philippines. Not much. I mean, in the US, there are public golf courses, but drive nice. I will. Well, I hope the missionaries will not be angry with me. But if you're in the Philippines and you are a missionary funded by the church, and then you go to your church and you drive a nice car, and none of your church members have cars.
Mm.
Does that look right? Right? I would rather take the jeepney and use some of my
Yeah,
money to start the livelihood program. Yeah,
because I
and then
think that
my children are My children are studying in a international school.
and
So yeah, go ahead.
that's kind of how a lot of people that are not Christians criticize it that way. Like that you're just getting like funded to go on this longer vacation because of how they're living. Now, that's what I was saying, is that I think it would be better, which is difficult, obviously, to get a job in the place that you say, I'm going to be, let's say you're like, I'm going to be a missionary in Qatar, that you would go there, find a job, do a church, but maybe minimally funded by the maybe, you know, have the church fund your first 2 months rent or something, and then the rest you have to, you know, to try to start you off on your feet, and then after that you get a job, you know, something difficult. I mean, it's not, obviously, I'm not one to talk because I'm not a missionary. I don't know how that kind of life is, but it's just hard to see and justify, like, that are people really wanting to learn about the gospel, or are they just like,
Because
oh, they're
why is there a difference between local? We have local missions and foreign missions. Local missions is supporting church planting in the Philippines. Foreign is you go abroad. In the Philippines, normally when you support, you get 100% support when you plant a church on say year one, and every year the support is reduced by 20%. And on the 5th year or 6th year, you have no more support. The assumption is you are able to build a church and the church can support you. So you do not keep, you know, being, you know, dependent on your sending agency. Now, I do think there are a lot of missionary organizations following the concept. But why is it applied locally and not applied overseas? Because the idea of the New Testament, going back to Paul, is that the church is self-sufficient to support their own workers. So if you're called there as the missionary for the church, somehow after some time, you teach them to tithe, you teach them to give, you will be supported. Maybe not financially totally, but by food. Did I tell you this story of a conference I spoke? And then among the young people, and then there was this beautiful lady. So you know how the young people gathering is, just the men will congregate with, around beautiful ladies. And so I decided to interview the lady. I said, "Ma'am, can I interview you? What do you want to be when you finish college?" I want to be a psychologist. What's the course you're taking? I'll be a psychology. Now, what kind of man do you want to marry as, or what kind of man do you want to have as husband? I said, pastor. I said, why pastor? I said, and people say, oh, pastor, no money. Pastor, no money. And so you know how the kids are. No. I want to be a pastor because my dad is a pastor missionary in the northern tribes of Philippines. His support is only 200 pesos a month. So what is that in dollars? $7?
Like $4?
$4 a month. He said, but we have never been hungry, ever. Because meat will come to the house, food, vegetables, rice will arrive from the members. We have never been hungry. So I would like to have a wife that is not hungry.
A husband.
So I want to be a wife, she said.
Oh, I want to be a wife to have a husband.
So that I'm not hungry. So that I'm not hungry. And the best person to marry, in my view, that I will not be hungry, is a pastor. Yeah. Yeah. So his father, I know Danny Ganibe, and I'm happy to know the father. He's dead now. 200. I didn't even know his support was 200 pesos. But you
Josh,
know,
we were never
uh,
hungry. That because if dad preached, remember when we were younger, if dad preached at the Korean church, the love
I'll give
gift
it
was so
10,000.
high. It's 10,000, so we get to eat teriyaki boy.
Yeah. And then, you know, AV just would say, Dad, that was 10,000. Why would you preach 4 times?
Yeah.
So
Why
yeah,
would you preach
yeah.
4 times in one Sunday?
Yeah, in one Sunday, so 40,000 per Sunday.
What are love gifts? Are those just like appreciation gifts? Like, oh, we appreciate that you came here. Is that what a love gift is?
Yeah. Like if you
yeah,
speak at a church and then they give
yeah,
you a gift,
yeah,
like a little something for
yeah,
speaking because you're like a guest speaker. So my
yeah,
dad would go to this church, and I remember I think it was like a Korean church or they're
yeah.
predominantly Korean, and
The
it was like
Koreans, yeah,
10,000. I remember that.
yeah,
Maybe
But
just
yeah.
ask her if she wants to speak next.
No.
Avi was like, "Yeah, I'll speak 10,000. Like I'll speak next."
Did they want like were they requesting you to come? Or like I volunteer myself like every Sunday.
You're like every
Like
Sunday. I'll come every Sunday.
Yeah.
normally in our church, this is really strange, you know, because there is a little bias. Yeah, because if they sort of like you more as a speaker, you get a bigger love gift.
Oh my
Uh,
God.
and yeah, this is really crazy in the Philippines. This is really crazy. Because they will decide what to give you after you
They
preach.
decide after the
Uh,
service.
After the service.
My
It's
gosh.
not like
So
it's not like in the
nerve-wracking.
it's not like in the envelope before the preacher, whether the preacher
Right.
preaches badly or not, you get this.
No, it's
You know?
not. It's at
Yeah,
the
yeah.
end. If you preach
Do you
then-
check how many
terribly,
love gifts you get throughout the service? Like, okay, 10 love gifts, I'm doing good.
No, you get one.
50
No, you
love
get one. No, you
no,
get
so
one.
it's
no,
one. They give
you
you
get
one
one.
envelope.
No, and then some
Oh,
people will
it's
still
one
give.
envelope.
Well,
I
like,
thought
like in our
you
church,
gave us
in our
different
church, example in our church, we normally our church is standard. We give 3,000 only, whether you're good or not. And then, but if we think you're needy, even if you're not good, we give 5,000. Meaning, if you're the speaker and we know you're needy, like your daughter is like in the hospital or something like that, and we give more. You give more not for your talent, we give more for your need. So
Your
that we
need,
give like
okay.
5,000. But very strangely, even if we give 3,000, when the other members are so blessed with the speaker, they give the speaker different envelopes. Sister lost 2,000, this guy, and something. The speaker ends up going more than 10,000. Because there's some members.
With that, he speaks each Sunday, but he has to give 5,000.
Yeah,
He
me,
has
I
to-
speak. No one gives me.
Yes.
No
No
one
one
gives
gives him
me.
any
5,000. So he gives him the love gift.
Yeah, I don't give. I
Not
don't
give
give
the
you
love
some.
gift.
No, I will complain next Sunday and say I was sort of called by my children that I've been preaching here and I've not been getting love gifts. Whereas invited speakers get love gifts. This is really not fair.
I got
So
one last year
yeah,
when I went to speak.
yeah.
I
I
actually
did 3,000, right?
I got my first love gift last year. It was so cool.
George also, I think, got a love gift.
Josh got one
Josh,
too.
yeah, but he didn't declare it to Amy, I think.
Huh?
Did you tell Avi you got a love gift last year?
No, I have to give it back. I just gave it back.
Avi didn't know.
I just gave it back.
I was like, I guess he
Well,
wasn't that good. Just kidding.
No, he got a love gift, but then we just gave it back, like, you know, to a specific ministry, which is
Right.
funny though.
Yeah.
The last question I have, which kind of wraps up to like what's the point, and if you all guys want to answer, like what would be practical ways that missionaries or Christians in general, since missions is not just for missionaries, what are practical ways to spread the gospel, you know, in today's day and age? Like how should we be doing that, kind of like based on Paul's teachings? And then that's the what's the point is of this.
I'm really a bit strong in this advocacy. I believe that missionary work is foremost kingdom building. So you are there to build the kingdom. But the kingdom is not just preaching the good news, it's the totality of it. Preaching the good news, kingdom building, service. And so I would call that the missionary work is not just immersion, but empowerment. Because there is this concept that You go as a missionary, understand the culture, be immersed there, and live like them. That's good, but that's half of it. The other role is to empower them to be better than the previous self. So if this community is poor, I preach them the gospel. I teach them also to be good farmers. So they are out of poverty. So I go there. It's a squatter area or depressed area in the Philippines. I go there, I immerse with them, but I teach them to be entrepreneurs, to be good workers, to be up beyond their level. So your being a missionary is not just to bring the gospel, but to bring change and transformation in the community. And that was what happened to Paul as well. And I'm happy when I look at example. I'm not being proud of this is all for God's glory, but you would see that when we started with the ministry in Kazam or the areas I do, I was preaching to the squatter areas. And when I look at these people now who finished college, who are doing business, they have their own cars, they are giving tithes. I said even the tithes were coming because they were already professionals, managers, businessmen. They were previously living Tina, Minda, Sister Lois. When I look at all of them, they were all in the depressed areas. Even they were living really poorly, and one now has a big house, like 4 children abroad, and So that I think is empowerment. I think that's what Paul wanted. But when you go there in an area, you do not only bring the gospel, you also look at how they can be better persons, economically, professionally. In all aspects of their life. That's part of the missionary one.
Yeah, I always thought it was strange when I would hear about missions and then they wouldn't feed the people that they were seeing, or they wouldn't give back to the community in a way that they understood, they just oh, the gospel's enough, and it is enough, but people I feel receive it better when you give, if they're starving and they can't eat and they're hungry, they're not gonna receive the message the same way as if you just fed them and then the reason I'm feeding you is because I'm here to share the gospel with you.
Yeah.
I don't know,
but you have to be careful though that it's not a dole out concept, not a dole out. So you do not give them fish. Maybe the first time you have to teach them how to fish.
right?
Yeah,
right.
What do you think, Josh?
Give them
Go ahead, Amy.
I was just saying, just bestow something that they can that's tangible that they can have after to support themselves.
Yeah. What do you think, Josh? How can you practically, I guess, do missionary work now?
So what Dad and Avi said is good. One thing about Avi that she kind of, now I'm thinking about what she said, not this one, but as we, had convos in the past. With Avi, when she goes to a country, she wants to, she wants to be authentic to the country. So she wants to know the language. So that's one thing, as a US, maybe, you don't just think, oh, but they know English, or that's good enough,
Yeah, that's
maybe give it time to know
That's the one thing that I find really irritating as an American is most Americans, one, they assume that everybody knows English, which is no other country assumes that. You know what I mean? I feel just Americans are that for some reason. And then I just feel it's a form of entitlement, because then when you don't feel you have to speak any other language besides English, then people are already kind of at arm's length. They're well, you're not making any efforts to understand me. So why, you know what I mean? So that kind of goes back to what Josh was saying. I feel if you are personally called to do foreign missions, not everybody is, but if you're that person, then make an effort to learn the language, or learn their customs, learn their culture, so that you're more relatable and that you show I am trying to understand you in a better way.
I think that when you mentioned the language thing, I know Mormons are very big in that. I've seen when we were younger, Mormons in the Philippines riding the jeepney and speaking in Tagalog. They're full on white guys, but they and they're not just saying one word in Tagalog. They took classes to speak, because they could converse in Tagalog, which is crazy to me. But that's part of their ministry, is when they go get sent out, they have to learn the language, which I like that point, Amy, where you said that.
The only problem, Carrie, is that they wear a necktie. Do you remember that? They wear white, all white, and a necktie. So in that sense, necktie. In that sense, they're not looking Filipinos. That
Yeah, they
the,
don't
the
look like
cultural.
Filipinos.
So yeah, so that by their looks, you distance your self
Yeah,
as well.
because then you would be
That's a
also be
problem there.
overwhelmed and maybe like
Mm.
kind of nervous around them because they're dressed nice, you know.
The
But
one thing I want to say
oh, go
is,
ahead, Josh.
when it comes to maybe missions and those things, I just, as Dad said, hang out with the you know individuals that God has given you kind of that influence in, and then in essence, by you hanging out, don't just hang out, because a bunch of times you just hang out, it's kind of a checkbox, but hang out with them and give them hope. You know what I mean? Because most times when you go to a mission, you have this kind of scope that's not the same as what they have. So most of them maybe won't have the same hope as you do. So that's maybe one thing that you need to put emphasis, is the hope, not just, oh, hope in heaven, this thing sucks, but give them hope. Hey, maybe, not maybe, but God can use you in this life too. That's what that has done, a good job of, I think, is,
Mhm.
I guess, stewarding them to find the gifts that God has given them. Because the issue is, some of them give up too soon, and say,
Mhm.
oh, the gifts, and so they don't chase, and don't ask God. But how can you know what it is if you don't ask? So that's what that's one thing, I guess, practical that you can do, is give them hope by just being hanging out with them and asking them, not just one time, but giving them that, that mindset of hope.
Yeah.
So
No, I think that's really
Yeah.
big. And I think that the what we talked about today on missions and just the practicality of it and how to really do it now.
A story of missionary, and so he was told, you have to use your money not only for yourself, but to give livelihood. So he checked the culture in the Philippines, and he checked that the wives overpower the husbands in the Philippines. So it's the wives are more followed more than the husband as the head. So the missionary said, told his son, we will provide livelihood to 12 families. So the other livelihood is you give them a hen and a rooster. Okay, that's the set, so that they can start to lay eggs and propagate it. Okay, and have a poultry after that. So you give that, when you see that it's the wife overpowering the husband, give them a hen and a rooster. Now, there are two water buffaloes. I think AB did not see a water buffalo. Carabao. Can you describe Carabao to AB? It's a water buffalo that you use for work, to plow the field.
Yeah, for work. Yeah, to plow.
Oh.
Yeah,
Okay.
for work. Yeah, a work animal. Big like cow.
It looks
big,
like it kind of like a longhorn.
longhorn.
Okay.
And
AB.
there's a black longhorn, and there's a white. So he said that you have two. So he was carrying two by the rope, and carrying in his sort of tricycle 10 sets of chicken. So he would ask, go to the knock at the door, who is following the husband or the wife? And they would say, me. Oh, chicken, hen, and rooster, and every house. And finally, it was like 5 o'clock. 9 sets of hens and roosters were given, and only
Okay.
one hen and rooster, and still he has 2 water buffaloes, because he could not find any family that the man is the one followed, not the woman.
Okay.
And so there was a couple walking and said, oh, this guy looks cool. Hey, he said, you call a couple? Yes. Let me ask a question. Who is followed? Who is the leader of your home? Who's followed? You, the husband, or the wife? The husband. Me. I'm the boss. Very good. Finally, I can give this water buffalo. Okay, sir. What color would you like of this? I said, I want the white. And the wife said, no, not white. And he said, oh, here is the rooster and the hen.
What did the wife say?
Oh, I want black.
I want
The
the other
black.
one, the black one.
Oh, so he was. Oh, I get it.
So she's actually the one that she's actually the boss.
Yeah, it's the boss.
Oh my
That
God.
one went the white. Well, no, get the black. Okay, you get a rooster and I.
I have a question. What does
That's
that have to do
funny.
with anything? I don't get it. What does that have to do with what we talked about?
No, livelihood. Actually, I was talking about livelihood.
Oh,
Because
just
it's
like
really
in working.
then I just put in a joke there because livelihood in the farm, you can give animals and it's used to plow, or you can give
Yeah.
chicken to start a poultry or pig to start a piggery. And I was just injecting that to whom should you give the working animal and to whom should you give the chicken? You know?
The chicken.
Hey, John,
Well,
choose a relationship.
God.
good answer.
God.
Well, I
This is huge thing. So I guess to kind of closes it out, when we think about missions and stuff, what's insane is that, in the word of God, one of the, I guess, things that needs to happen and then Jesus comes back is that the world needs to hear each nation needs not it. So for Jesus to come back, each nation, I guess, should have heard the gospel. And so he's not gonna have, until that happens. And so
yeah,
that's, if you want him to come back in your lifetime,
you need to
selfishly,
push for that. Yeah, that's it.
And that's the reason why God allowed technology
I know.
to fulfill
Yeah,
that.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
what
because
because
how else can you reach it
I think
without
two
technology?
things that you can do. One thing is Elon Musk, Starlink now can give you the access to have Wi-Fi any place in the world. The
Mm,
Sahara Desert, you can have it.
yeah,
So
I know because we have
that's the
Starlink
next,
and
which makes sense. So that's huge because now we have iPads. We
yeah,
have
everywhere.
drones. You can have a drone, have a speaker, and then just say that in the language they have. And that's easy.
Yeah,
With a Wi-Fi, it's like,
yeah, if it's like a cannibalistic tribe,
You
you
can
just
just
decide
out
to
the
the
thing.
drone instead of going into
yeah.
so it's
Got
Well, when you got to say that, what actually the Bible says, what Josh was pointing out, is the Bible did not say, when all the people will know the gospel, then I will come back. Actually, that was not it. When all the nations,
yeah.
nation.
not all the people,
mm,
all the nations. So when all the nations have been given the chance to hear the gospel, then he will come back. Because God is still fair. He wants to give everybody the chance to choose. So you cannot say, oh, no, the gospel did not reach me. So I think
yeah,
even
but
Elon Musk, even Bill Gates are being used by God in the same way that the Roman Empire was used by God to build roads so that
yeah,
cities can be rich. I would believe that all infrastructure is being used by God, even if it was intended differently to be maximized for kingdom building.
What's insane too is that you guys know this pastor, but Rick Warren, the one that did Purpose Driven Life and stuff, he
Yeah.
is doing this kind of push to finish the Great Commission by 2030. It's kind of
oh,
insane.
that's
Yeah,
big.
Yeah. The beauty with
Like
Rick
it's in
Warren,
7 years.
the beauty with Rick Warren is that he did not, when he began getting royalties from his book, he told the church not to pay him in his salary anymore. And then he put the royalty to a fund
Yeah,
to keep on doing it and not enrich himself from the royalty because it's one of the best classic
selling
bestsellers
books
globally.
still.
Yeah, the Purpose-Driven
Yeah,
Life sold multi-millions of copies globally.
yeah. No, it is because I know it's been there since we were kids.
That's the
But
hope though, is that 2030, why not, to finish that, portion off.
Yeah, but the practical side of 2030 is you really have to have children before that, so you can see at least how they look like before you go to heaven.
That's fine.
I know that's a little plug.
As I've said, if you want, we can have kids, but you have to sponsor. So
No
this
problem.
this
No
is their
problem.
mission.
No problem.
This
No
is
problem.
this is a mission.
I can sponsor it using Filipino budget context. Because the funds are coming from the Philippines, right?
You should get more
Not the
love gifts.
American.
Don't
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah, so Filipino budget.
Filipino budget context. It were different if I were American and I will sponsor my children living in the Philippines. So $3,000 is 150,000, 160,000 in the Philippines. But oh my, 30,000 pesos in the Philippines is only $600 in the US. How can your kid live?
I was thinking,
I
you know what?
know.
You know what we can do is me and
Yeah.
AB have a kid, and then do that thing that you see on TV. The arms of an angel.
Oh my gosh,
And
you're looking
me and AB's kid, and then
Like
it's just
starving our
I
child,
know.
like starving, has like no clothes on.
And
like,
then we
living
show
in a
that to
cave.
Kazan. We show that to Janet and them. That way they, oh my
To
gosh,
get to get the donations.
I know, get the donation.
Arms of the
I
angel.
know.
That's
Just so
funny.
that
I'm pretty sure CPS would be called at that point. We would no longer have her.
they don't have CPS that big in the Philippines. That's fine.
What's TPS? What's TPS?
CPS,
Well, okay.
Child Protective Services.
They don't really do a
Gotcha.
good job of protecting children.
They don't have
But,
that. They don't have it
Yeah.
as big.
We don't have that
Um,
here.
You guys have anything else to add, or do you want me to go ahead and close this in prayer?
Why would you ask for an offering first?
Offering.
Joking. Okay.
All right, I'll close this in prayer. Dear Lord, thank you so much for this time that we can discuss Paul and his teachings on missions. Thank you for what we learned today. I pray that anyone who's listening to this can really understand that missions isn't just going overseas or going to a whole nother city. It's really just teaching and spreading the word of God within our own sphere of influence. That's also missions. And I pray that each of us can find our own gift and how to use our gifts, our talents, our jobs to spread the gospel, help us understand and learn from that and learn from what we talked about today. Thank you so much for this time. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.